Okay, welcome everyone. Wonderful to have everybody. As we are dedicated by Shalom Fogeli, the Nishmas Yaakov Zeb ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam bas Gad, Yosef ben Sion ben Yaakov Zev, the Rufus Shalema for Moshe Aryeh ben Miriam, and for a great Shidduch soon, for Chaya Tzivya bas Shoshana Gittel. We are dedicated by Baruch Ian, Lili Nishmas, Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKohen, L'Fur Shalema for Liba bas Anya. We're dedicated for a great shit, quickly, for Batya bas Sarah, for the health and welfare of Yosef Shmuel ben Miriam, and for all those that are waiting children, should have a healthy mommy, healthy baby, especially for Ariel and Lior bas El Zarifka. Okay, Rabbi Isai, we are going to start on the bottom of Daf Tesvav Amud Beis at the Gemara. Now, the Nesachim that accompany a car.
Amen.
The Nesachim that accompany a carbon are a tricky business. They can be brought even 10 days later. So the question is, when you make pigel, so what happens with the nesachim? So Tan Rabbana Nische Behema, the libations of an animal chayavan aleim pigel. Why? Because the blood of the carbon allows them to be poured down the shitin, to be poured as libations. Divrei Meir. So the Rabbanan counter that a person could bring his carbon today and he could bring the libations 10 days later. So, Amalahen, so Rameir counters, Afani lo yamarti ela b'boim amazevach. I'm talking about wine that was brought together with the carbon. So the Rabbanan say, but it could be shifted to another carbon. Amalei efshel l'shanoisei l'zevach acher. So why is it locked into this carbon? So now we're getting to the root of the machlokes. Amar Rava, Kesavar Rav Meir, that hukvu b'shchita. When the wine is there, and you do the shchita, it gets locked together with the carbon, kelachmei taida, like the loaves of the taida get locked together with the carbon with the shchita. Now the same discussion can be had with the loig shemen shel mitzayra, the log of oil that's offered, that's used for the mitzayra. Remember, we put the oil in the place that we put the blood, on the big toe, the big thumb, the ear. So Tana Rabbanan loig shemen shel mitzayra, chayavan olav ishum pigel, that if he shechts the asham, it will affect, with a machshava of pigel, it'll affect the oil. Because the blood of the ashim is what allows it to be placed on the big toe, big thumb, and ear. Divrei Meir. Amalei Meir. So again, the Rabbanan, in the same way, say, V'aloi adam mevi hashamo hayayim. He could bring the guilt offering today, and the loig even 10 days later. So he said to them, I'm talking about where he brings the oil together with the asham. But again, the Rabbanan say it can be shifted to another carbon. Here again, Rav Meir showing his opinion. He holds that once you shecht the asham, the oil that's with it gets locked to that asham. Amar Rava Kasav Rav Meir hukvu b'shchita. Once you shecht it, the oil gets locked to this asham, kilach meitaida, like the loaves get locked to that specific taida. Now remember, the procedure of a mincha is that we smoke up two things on the mizbeach. We smoke up two things on the mizbeach. We smoke up the handful, and we also smoke up the levina. We also smoke up the frankincense. So now, says the Mishnah, pigel b'kaimetz v'loy b'levina. Let's say Mark, our pigalist, there's a bigamist and there's a pigalist. Right? Mark is not a bigamist, but a pigalist, he is. He's the pigalist that I know of. So says the Gemara, pigel b'kaimetz. Let's say he takes the kmitza, having in mind to eat the shirayim after its time, v'loy b'levina, but he's not mefagel when he does the levina. Now remember, the kmitza and the levina are both matirin. B'levina v'loy b'kaimetz, or he has in mind a machshav of pigel with the levina, but not with the kmitza. Rameir says you could be mefagel with a chatzi matir, so pigel v'chayav and alav karas. The Chachamim say it's not pigel, ain't by karas, unless you have in mind with the whole matter, both by the kmitza and by the levina. Now, obviously, in a mincha that doesn't have levina, then the kmitza will do it alone. And we know that a minchas chayte and a minchas kanais, because we don't want it to be a nice carbon. Minchas kanais is the mincha brought by the saita. Or maidim chacham l'rameya b'minchas chayte b'minchas kanais she'im pigel b'kaimetz, that if he's mafagel when he does the kmitza, having in mind to have the shirayim the next day, should pigel v'chayav and alav karas, because there's no levina by the mincha. She'akaimetz hu amatim. Now, let's now turn to the kifsei atzeres. Right? There's two lambs, and the two lambs together are matir the two loaves, the shtei alechem. So says the Mishnah, Shachad echad min hakvasim. Here again, it's a chatzi matir. Shachad echad min hakvasim lechol beis chalos l'macher, to eat the two chalos on the next day. Or hikter echad min habazichin. Now let's the lechem upon him. The showbread, which has 12 loaves and the 2 spoonfuls of frankincense. Hikter echad min habazichin. Again, it's a chatzi matir. He's makter one of the spoons lechol beis sedarim l'macher. So Rameir says that there could be pigel with a chatzi matir. So Rameir am a pigel. V'chayav and alav karis. V'chacham aimim. The chacham say aim by karis ad sheyafagel b'chol amatir. Now turning to the lambs. Shachad echad min hakvasim lechol mimenu l'macher. If he shechts one of the lambs to eat from its meat on the next day, so who pigel? That lamb is pigel, but v'chaveiroi kosher. But the other lamb is kosher. Lechol mechaveiroi l'macher. If he shechts one lamb to eat the other lamb the next day, that's shneim kshem. They're both kosher, because as we said, ein matir mefagel matir. A matir is not mefagel a matir. And since each of the lambs are a matir, ein matir mefagel matir. Now here comes an interesting thing. The Chachamim say there's no pigel b'chatzi matir. But what if he does the kmitza with a machshava of pigel, and then by the levina he's quiet? Do we say that he probably has in mind the same thing to have at Kutzlas Manai? Because since he was quiet, al das rishonahu isa, he's following his original thought. So that's Rav's sentiment. Amar Rav machloikes shenosen es hakaimetz b'shtika. He did the kmitza silently, so then we assume it's good. V'es halavayna b'machshava. And the levina he had in mind to to eat the shirayim chutz l'zmana. So there, according to Rav Meir, it's a chatzi mater and it's pigel. According to Rabbanan, it's not. Aval nosen es a kaimetz b'machshava. But if he did the kmitza with a machshava to eat the shirayim after its time, ves halavayna b'shtika, and then he was quiet by the levayna, Rav holds, everybody holds that that's pigel. Because we say that his second act of the levayna follows his das rishayna, and since his das rishayna by the kmitza was l'shem pigel chutz l'zmanai, we assume the same thing is true by the levayna, as the Gemara says. If he does the kmitza with the machshava of pigel, of eating it chutz l'zmanai, the esan levayna b'shtika, then even the Rabbana will hold that it's pigel. Divrei kol pigel. Why? Shekala oisa, when he follows the first act, al das rishayna oisa. We assume that he has in mind, like he had it articulated by the kmitza. So since he articulated the kmitza chutz l'zmanai, even though he was quiet by levayna, we figure it's al das rishayna, and then it's pigel in the whole matter. That's Rav's opinion. Shmuel says we don't make such an assumption. Shmuel says, even though he was mafagel in the kmitza, and he was quiet in the levayna, we don't assume that he wanted to do the levayna the way he did the kmitza. So Yosef Rava was sitting, and Rava was saying over this machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. So Eisvei Rav Acha bar Rav Huna l'Rava. Rav Acha bar Rav Huna said to Rava, Ba'amed v'amamurim, where do we say that the Rabbanan who hold? There is a situation where even the Rabbanan agree that it could be pigel even with just one act. And that's if you do the kaimitz with a machshava to eat it after its time. Because the kaimitz doesn't apply to the levayna. You don't do a kmitza on the levayna. So Yosef Rava v'kama lahashmaitza Eisrei Rav Acha bar Rav Huna l'Rava Ba'amed v'amamurim, that we say that is pigel even according to the Rabbanan, even if you don't have in mind the machshava in the levayna, that's b'kmitza, with the taking of the handful. Ubamat and keli, and being mekadosh the handful in the keli, because both those apply only to the kmitza and not to the levayna. Ubehilach, and also bringing the kmitza to the mizbeach. But when it comes to smoking it up, since smoking it up applies both to the kmitza and the levayna, nasan as hakaimitz b'shtika v'as levayna b'machshava. If he does the kaimitz quietly and the levayna with a machshava, or as a kaimitz b'machshava, the kmitza with a machshava, v'es ha-levayna b'shtika, so he has in mind either way. Rameir who holds that this pigel b'chatzi mater, Rameir says pigel b'chayavan love kars, v'chachamim ayrim ein by kars at shirfagel b'chol amater. But here it says clearly that not like Rav. It says clearly, Ketani Mia Nosen as a Kaimitz b'machshava, if he does the Kmitza b'machshava as Alavayna b'shtika, we don't say Al Das Rishayna Hu Aisa, but rather Upligi the Rabbanan hold it's not pigel. Says the Gemara, well, Ema Ukvar Nosen as Alavayna b'shtika meikar. No. It means that he already did the Lavayna b'shtika. He didn't do it after he did the kmitza. Says the Gemara, that doesn't work for two reasons. Shtei tshuvas b'davar. Chada d'hainu k'maisa. Then it's the same thing that he said a moment before, where he did the kmitza with the machshava and the levaina b'shtika. That's the same thing. I'm sorry, where he did the kmitza b'shtika and the levaina b'machshava. It's the same thing, where he had the machshava afterwards. And v'oid, you can't say that he already did the levaina because of Tanya achakach. Says the Gemara, no, you know why we don't say al das rishaynu isa over here? For a different reason. It's talking about where the kmitza and the levaina were being done by two different kahanim. Tirgam Rav Chanina b'shtei deyos, where it's doing by two different kahanim. By two different kahanim, obviously we don't say al das rishaynu isa, because the machshavas were by two different people. So the Gemara again tries. Tajma, Bamed v'amurim. Where do we say that Rav Meir holds that, not necessarily Rav Meir, where do we say that a machshava by one thing could cause pigel? B'domim anitonin al mizbeach hachitza. That's the blood that's put on the outer altar. That's most karbanas. Right? Most karbanas, ashim, chatas, oila, shlamim, taida, that's blood is put on the outer altar. But the blood that's put on the inner altar, now on Yom Kippur, that refers to the dam of the par and the sar, which is offered in the Kodesh Kodashim against the paraichas, on the corners of the Mizbeach Hazav, and on the center of the Mizbeach Hazav, tallying up all of these placements for both the par and the sar, that's 43 applications. Or by the par kohen Mashiach, it's against the paraichas and on the Mizbeach Hazav, it's a total of 11. 7 on the paraichas and 4 on the Mizbeach Hazav. The achas asar shel par kohen Mashiach. The achas asar and the 11 shel par helam davar shel tzibur, where the tzibur made Sanhedrin made a mistake, and it was followed by the majority of Klal Yisrael. There, Pigel bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlishis. It was mefagal in the first set, the second set, or the third set. Rav Meir says, Pigel v'chayav and olav karas. It's Pigel and Yechayev karas, because each one is a chatzi mata. The chachamim ayrim ein by karas, there's no karas, actually yefagal b'chol mata. But here it says Ketani Mia, Pigel Bein Barishayna, Bein Bishnia, Bein Bishlishis. So Rav, you see that even if he was Mefagel on the first one, and he was quiet by the other 2 and 3, we don't say Al Das Rishaynu Aisa. And yet Upligi. Says the Gemara, B'chitei Ma'achanami B'shtei Deis. Now how could it be Shtei Deis? How could it be 2 different Kahanim? All the Avodah on Yom Kippur has to be done by the Kohen Gadol. So it can be, because it could be that the Kohen Gadol died in between. So, v'chitei ma'achanami b'shtei deyes, different Kohanim gedolim, ha'nichad la'aman dama b'par, v'afilu b'dama shel par. In other words, if the Kohen Gadol dies, you could still use the same blood. El la'aman dama b'par, v'loi b'dama shel par, it has to be the par of the Kohen Gadol, and if he dies, you have to start over again. So it can't be different Kahanim Gedolim at different stages. Ma'i kalameima. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav ha'achab b'mayaskinon kegayin shepigel barishayna. He was mafagel in the Kodesh Kodashim, v'shasak b'shniya, and he was silent by the second one, upigel b'shlishis. And then when he did it on the Mizbeach Hazav, he was mafagel. So here, we don't automatically say Al Das Rishayna Isa, because if he did it Al Das Rishayna, why did he have to be Mefagel again on the third one? Damrin on Isa Kedaita Kala Isa Al Das Rishayna Isa, if he had in mind if he had in mind what he did in the beginning, then why did he have to think about it again at the third set on the Mizbeach Azav? Mahadeh Pigula B'Shlishi Lamali. Says Gemara, but it doesn't say it. It says Bein B'Rishayna, Bein B'Shniya, Bein B'Shlishis. It doesn't say if he was Shasak. Maskav Rav Ashi Midei Shasak Katani. Does it say that he was quiet? El Amar Rav Ashi Hachad B'Mayaskinan Kigain Shepigo B'Rishayna U'B'Shniya. He was mefagel with the first one and the second one, and he was quiet with the third one. There we don't say Al Das Rishaynu Isa, because if he was relying on his original thought, why did he have to have in mind again on the second one? Isal Gedaita, Amina, Isal Gedaita Kala Isal Das Rishaynu Isa, Mahad Pigel B'Shniya Lamali, why did he have to be mefagel with the second one? Again, the Gemara says, but that doesn't fit into the language. It says, Bein B'Rishayna, Bein B'Shniya, Bein B'Shlishis, Ha Bein Bein Ketani. It says Gemara Kasha. That's Taka Shver. That's Taka Shver. Now, you know what? While we're starting over here already, a new page, we have 38 Zoomers here, so we should welcome them, as we welcome in Saba and Chaim Kramer, Yaakov Warman, Irving Fishbaum, Mark Frankel, Chaim Lerner, Dr. Guy, Yitzi Fuchs, Reuven Pollack, Yisrael Fisher, Baruch Ian, Shimon Klein, Rabbi Kranz, Gabriel Epstein, Nachman Chapler, the one and only Barry Cement, Eddie Chazan, Shelley Zeitlin, Berish Gesserman, Itchy, Mel Zachter, Sean Fogel, Dr. Black, Michal, Rabbi Kranz, Dr. Eisenberg, Moshe Lehman, Stephen Holtzman, Danny Vogel, Naftali Jablin, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Yehuda Solomon, Eli Yafi, Avram Rezepkowitz, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller, Richard Rosenzweig, Gedalia Engel. Here in Shul we have Michal Avram, Iran, and Ruvain Shannon. Now, Amar is a deeper analysis, like Gufa. Reb Meir Aimer Pigel v'chayav and love karos. Here's the problem. Remember, you could only get karos for Pigel if you do everything else right. Michte karos loy mechayvu at sheyikruvu kol hamatirin. Right? Damamar Yerotza. It says in the pasuk Yerotza. It should be accepted. Kartzoas kosher, just like something that's kosher has to be accepted. Kachartzoas posel. So also to lock it in Pigel, everything else has to be good. Ma'artzoas kosher at sheyikruvu kol hamatirin. You have to do everything else right. Afartzoas posel at sheyikruvu kol hamatirin. But wait a second. If he did the blood in the Kodesh Kedashim with a machshava of Pigel, v'hai kaven the chashiv b'bifnim paslei, he pasled that blood, and if he pasled it kimadi beheichel, then when he sprinkles it in the heichel against the paraychis, he's using water. So how could it become Pigel? Maya ba'almuhu de kamadi. He's like sprinkling water. So the Gemara says, and by the way, the Gemara is splitting it now into 4 applications. Because it's done inside the Kodesh Kodashim, it's done against the Paraychas, it's done on the 4 corners of the Mizbeach Hazav, and then on the center 7 times of the Mizbeach Hazav. So Amar Rav, you know how it's possible? Amar Rabba mishkachas lo ba'arba porim va'arba seirim. Enochnami had a machshava of Pigel inside the Kodesh Kodashim. So that disqualifies the blood. But they continue and they shecht another par in the sar. And then if he has a machshava of Pigel against the paraychas, they shecht another par in the sar. And then if he continues and he's mefagel on the 4 corners, they shecht another par in the sar. It's found by arba parim v'arba seirim. Rava says, now you don't have to say something so dramatic. Rava says, obviously, if we're saying that this Pigel, it would be Not possible, because once it's pigel, it's no good. It's water, and if it's water, then it's never finished. Then you would never have a case of pigel. So Rava says that obviously we say over here, afilu teima par echad v'sar echad. The blood is good enough if you go through all the motions. Lifgule maratze. It's enough to lock it in to pigel. So now the Gemara asks, but there isn't 43, there's 47. You see, there's a machlokes when they did the blood on the four corners of the Mizbeach Hazav, did they mix the blood of the par and sar and do it together? Or did they do it separately from the blood of the par and from the blood of the sar? The one that says 43 holds that they mixed the blood of the par and the sar and they put them together on the four corners. The one that says 47 is that they did the blood of the par on the four corners, then the blood of the sar on the four corners, and then they mixed it, as the Gemara explains. Says the Gemara, Arbam v'shalosh 43, Vatanya Arbam v'sheva. We learned 47. Says the Gemara, Lo kasha ha'keman yama ma'arvin l'kronos, that they mixed the blood of the par and the sar to put it on the four corners. So therefore it's only 43. Ha'keman yama ein ma'arvin, they didn't mix it. So therefore you have an extra 4 because they did them independently. And then it's 47. I vatanya arbam v'shmeina, 48. The one that says 48, he holds that when we pour the shirayim at the western base of the Mizbeach Hazav, that also counts. That's also ma'akif. That's the opinion of Reb Nechemia. That pouring the remnants to the western base of the outer altar would invalidate, so therefore it's 48. The remnants do not invalidate. Now here comes an interesting question. If while bringing the kmitza to the Mizbeach, he has a machshava to eat it chutz l'zmanai. According to Rabbanan, is that pigel even though he doesn't have in mind by the Levina? So Bapashis, you would say not, because by the Levina it is also haylacha. Amar Rab Yochanan, haylacha b'kmitza. The haylacha is unique to the kmitza, and therefore it's mafagel, it's not considered a chatzi mater. Because just like haktara applies both to the kmitza and the levina, the haylacha also applies both to the kmitza and the levina. And that's, the Gemara says, Reish Lakish's opinion is eminently logical. Bishleim Reish Lakish, ikanami haylacha de levina. And therefore, just the haylacha of the kmitza is a chatzi mater, and according to the Rabbanan, there's no pigel by a chatzi mater. El Reb Yochanan my time. So now the Gemara introduces a new idea according to Reb Yochanan. Amar Rava, Kasava Reb Yochanan, Kol avoida she'ena materes, any avoida that's not a matter, it's not matter anything. So then it's its own distinct entity. Avoida chashuvahi, it's only its own distinct entity, and therefore lefagal aleh b'fnei atzim, it causes pigel on its own. Therefore the halach is not matter anything. The kmitza is matter the shirayim, right? But the halacha is not matter anything. Amalei Abaya, vari shchitas echad min hakvasim. The shechting of one of the lambs is not matter anything. The avodah she'ena matirasa. And yet we said according to the Rabbanan it's a chatzi matter and it's not mafagel. Upligi. Did not shachad echad min hakvasim lechol shtei chalas l'macher, or hikter echad min habazichin, or one of the spoonfuls lechol shnei zdarm l'macher. Rameir I'm a pigel b'chayav and a love karas because it's a chatzi matter. V'chachamim I'm a karas achi yafagel b'chol matter. So the Gemara says the shechita is a matter, because the shechita is mekadesh the blood. When you shecht, it's mekadesh the blood to be used. And being mekadosh the blood is like a matter. Amalei mi savrit. Well, first the Gemara says about the lambs. The shechita of the lambs is mekadosh the loaves. It's not the oven that's mekadosh the loaves. It's the shechita of the lambs that's mekadosh the loaves. Amalei mi savrit lechem betana kadosh. Shchitas kach kvasim mekachelech. Va'abol lekadosh, and when it comes to sanctify, that's kabbalah hatudami, and therefore it's not an entity on its own, and therefore it has a din of a chatzi matter. So now the Gemara turns to the Korban Pesach. We know that the Korban Pesach has to be shechted for people that could eat it. If it's shechted for people that can't eat it, it's no good. So, says the Gemara, Masiv Rav Shimi Barashi Achei Remoimrim Hiktim Mulim La'arelim. If you did the shechita of the first siman, we shech two simanim, the Veishin and the Kana. If you did the shechita of the first siman for circumcised people, and the second one for uncircumcised, kosher. Hiktim arelim lemulin, if you did it the first for uncircumcised, and the second for circumcised, pasul. And the Gemara says over there, just one second. Okay, so according to the Rabbanan, if having in mind in just one siman would not disqualify, because one siman is a chatzi mata, and a chatzi mata would not disqualify. The brisa here that says that if you have in mind the uncircumcised first, it's mefagel, that's going according to Rab Meir, that says that there's pigel by a chatzi mata. Now, if it's going according to Rab Meir, then why, if you have in mind the mulim first and then the uncircumcised is a good, still the chatzi mata is no good? So that's a discussion in Masechtas Pesachim. That's a good kasha, but that's the discussion in Masechtas Pesachim. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. Why is it a chatzi matter if the shechita is an independent act that is not coming to be matter anything? And the Gemara says, Amalei mi saved dam betzaver behema kaddish. Do you think the blood is sanctified in the neck of the animal? Dam sakin bekachelai. The blood is sanctified by the knife, and sanctifying is like a matter. So the Gemara says, okay, let's get back to our original shaila over here. Our original shaila is if he has in mind the machshava pigel with the hilacha, is that going to be enough even though he didn't have in mind in the levina? Or not? So he said, Reish Lakish says, well, there's halacha by the Kemitza and there's halacha by Levina. So it's chatzi matter. According to the Rabbanan, it's not pigel. While Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara is suggesting, holds that since the halacha is not matter anything, it's an entity on its own, and it causes pigel. So the Gemara says, Tashma, when do we say that a machshava pigel is enough? That's by kmitza, because by kmitza there's no levina. The kmitza is just an act done by itself. There's no kmitza on the levina. The same thing is true. There's no kiddush bekeli by a levina or behilach. So here it says also this pigel in the halacha. My lav hilach daktara, and we don't say Reish Lakish is svara that, but there is also halacha by levina. Lai hilach the matan keli. No, it's the halacha of the kmitza to put it into the keli, which there isn't by the levina. Says the Gemara, then it should have said hilach before the matan keli. Ihaki b'matan keli behilach. It should say it the other way. Behilach b'matan keli mebayilei. So the Gemara says, okay, we'll amend that. Halai kasha tani yachi. But then says the Gemara, it shouldn't say baloi la'aktar. According to you, if you say that there's also pigel by the halacha, it shouldn't just say first baloi la'aktar. It should say baloi la'halacha mebayilei. Says the Gemara, halai kasha. That's no difficulty. Kaven the halacha tzarech haktari, since the halacha is a need to smoke it up, kari le haktara. Says the Gemara, Ella nosen es hakaimetz b'shtika, when it says that he placed the kmitza b'shtika, says the Gemara, he shouldn't have said, whereas nosen es hakaimetz b'shtika, and the haktara pigel, he should say, according to you, that you want to say that the halacha is also like the haktara, haylach mebayilei. It should say haylach. Let me just make sure that that's the correct girsa. Nasan es hakaimitz b'shtika v'es halavayna with pigel. According to you, according to you, that according to you, why does he say aktara? He should say even holich. Says the Gemara kasha. That's taka kasha. Okay, for the last subject of the evening, we need Mark's participation. Mark does, as our resident pigelist, he does pigel. He does the aktara with a machshava to eat the shirayim tomorrow. But instead of doing the whole aktara to eat all the shirayim tomorrow, he's maktir a sesame amount of the mincha to eat a sesame tomorrow. Then he does another sesame of aktara to do another sesame tomorrow. And he does that until he finishes the whole thing. Now don't ask me. I'm not his mother. Don't ask me. Why he would do that? You have to talk to his therapist. But the bottom line is he's maktir a sesame amount to eat a sesame amount tomorrow. Then another sesame amount to eat another sesame until he finishes the whole thing. So he does have a mind on the whole aktara to eat the whole shirayim tomorrow. He has a machshava pigel, but he does it in the darndest way. So says the Gemara. Let's see it inside. Hikter shumshim lechol shumshim. He smokes up a sesame amount of the kmitza to eat a sesame amount of the shirayim. At shekala kaimitz kula, until he finishes the whole thing, and a machshava on the whole thing. Rav Chizkiya, Rav Amnuna, Rav Shneshus. 3 opinions. Chadam a pigel, one says pigel. V'chadam a puzzle, one says it's puzzle. V'chadam a kosher. So the Gemara says, well, we could unravel this as follows. Lema mandiyam a pigel to Rav Meir. So Rav Meir holds you could be mafagel with a chatzi matir. So here also he had pigel with a percentage, and then another percentage, and then another percentage. Mandiyam apostle to Rabbanan. Rabbanan say that you're not mafagel with a chatzi matter, but even though it's not pigel, but it's not kosher. Mandiyam a kosher to Rebbe. That was an opinion of Rebbe, that Rebbe held that if you shech the lambs to have a half a kazayas of one bread and a half a kazayas of the other bread, it's no good. It's not possible. So therefore, Rebbe will hold you can't combine all these little pieces. Says the Gemara, all of the assumptions you made are not. What's the word I'm looking for? Are not necessary. They're not. You can't assume them to be true. Says the Gemara, Mimai. Dilma ad kamli kama Reb Meir Hasam ela dechoshiv b'shiurai, where the chatzi matter was a share. Right, so you have in mind one of the spoonfuls, or one of the lambs, but that's a share. Aval hacha, it's a sesame amount. The leichisha b'shiurai, like maybe Reb Meir will also hold it's not pigel. The adkan leikami rabbanan, that there's no pigel by a chatzi matter. That's only where you don't do the whole thing. You had in mind only by the kmitza, but not by the levina. But here at the end, Mark did the whole thing. Says the Gemara, that it's not pigel. He didn't eventually have in mind the whole matter. At the end, Mark did have in mind the full amount. He did it in the darndest way, a sesame amount at a time, but at the end he had in mind the whole amount. And maybe Hakanami the pigel. V'adkan loikama Rebbe Hasam, that you can't. Try to mute people. V'adkan loikama Rebbe Hasam, that you can't combine a chatzi zayis of one loaf with the chatzi zayis of the other loaf. Because you don't have a full amount from that avodah. You have the full amount of flour. Hakinami the puzzle. Ella says the Gemara. The truth is, Elamandiyam a pigel divrei hakol. The one that says pigel could be going by according to everyone. Manda a puzzle divrei hakol, and manda a kosher divrei hakol could also be going according to everyone. Manda a pigel divrei hakol. You know why? Because even though Mark did it in the darndest way, kasaver derech achila bekach, some people eat slowly, v'derech haktorah bekach, and some people smoke it up piecemeal. So, okay, if it's the derech haktorah bekach, and it's the derech of eating that way, so then it's a pure machshava of pigel, and therefore it's pigel. Omani apostle divrei hakol. Why? Kasavar derech achila bekach. It's the way to eat it that way. Be'ein derech haktorah bekach, but it's not the way to smoke it up that way. So therefore, since it's not the way to smoke it up that way, it can't become pigel. But since he had a machshava to eat it after its time, and it's normal to eat it, it's going to be puzzle. It's like a mincha that's not smoked up. Excuse me. He holds derech achila bekach ve'in derech haktor bekach. It's the way to eat it. but it's not the way to smoke it up, and therefore it's like a mincha that wasn't smoked up, and therefore it's puzzled. He holds divrakol, kasavar derech haktorah bekach. It's the way to be makterit. Ve'ein derech achila bekach. So he didn't have a machshava that was bad, and therefore he did the haktorah, and he didn't have a machshava that was bad because that machshava is meaningless because it's not the way to eat it that way, and therefore it is kosher. Whoa! If we would say it's a mouthful, it would be an understatement. Okay, so now let me tell you what's happening now. Tomorrow night, the daf is at 9. Tomorrow night I hope to be broadcasting from Deerfield Beach in Florida. And since my flight lands Be'ezus Hashem at 5:38, and I have to get the car and get out and get to Deerfield and set up the computer, so this way I'll leave myself a little bit extra time and give the shir at 9. Tonight, we're going to have the Chumash shir. Remember, by the way, tomorrow we start a new Masechta in the Mishnah Yomis. Always a good time to join us on the Mishnah Yomis bandwagon as we start Tamura tomorrow night. And just give me a moment to set up, and we'll have the Chumash shir. Amen. Amen.